All right, so Chapter 6, it's all about drainage documentation. And I've got to preface with this is maybe one version, maybe not the ultimately preferred, but it's a good starting point, I think, for this group to discuss. You've all seen kind of snippets of what the software can do. So this chapter is trying to present the options of what the software can deliver for documentation purposes. So this chapter is set up to show how to take a drainage structure plan sheet that we had in the FDM 916 for the construction deliverable and repurpose it for drainage documentation. Mostly replace this lower right-hand corner of tables from construction data to calculations. This would kind of still promote the idea of there's kind of plan view, everything's available in one spot, and the table holds most of the valuable information. I think there is alternatives if large plots for drainage documentation is not the preference. There are ways to export those same tables to more report binder friendly sizes, although I'll say the storm tab is going to be a challenge to fit on a single sheet. So that's why you saw in the flex table everything's kind of smushed together. It does manage to fit on a 11 by 17 horizontal landscape layout. So that being the case, the workflow, if we're producing, we'll just call it a storm drain documentation sheet, the tools in use are going to be any extra labels, mostly for the drainage areas. Getting into some of the default reports that Open Roads has to offer, as well as the FDOT flex tables, exporting those and then placing them in the sheet. So for doing the labeling of the drainage areas, the node ID text favorite actually works just as well. To click on the drainage area itself, it'll be a dynamic label and provide the correct name. Hydraulic model properties. This is optional information for users to enter. Has fields for title, engineer, company, and notes. And not only will it be part of the model, it is included in some of the reports that can be exported. And speaking of reports, the report tab has a slew of predefined formatted reports that comes with Open Roads. Some of them are useful, particularly for a review, but from a final documentation perspective, it may not be the most concise way of documenting just the required pieces from the drainage manual. So the hydraulic model inventory includes a few sections embedded in the report, one of which is the scenario summary. So all of the settings that went into the calculations, it reports out. So if it was just a base, all the alternatives, had we made a new rainfall alternative, that sort of thing, it would tell us what the active scenario settings were. Calculation summary report, and so far all these are just standard Open Roads reporting. So the calculation summary that pops up after doing a compute, there is a report button, and that also automatically generates this executive summary that includes some useful information like which was the storm event used, all of your warning messages if you want those included, and then in the detailed summary, same summary box, but one over that details button brings you back to the window that includes all the various elements, and that itself also has a report. That's a lot of, I'd say, input in the kind of setup and parameters of the calculations. May or may not be useful. I wouldn't say all those things are detailed required documentation from the drainage manual, but certainly doesn't hurt. Then we get into tables. So we've already seen some of the FDOT flex tables. There are just the general functionality of open roads, and that everything is part of a database and somehow it is formed and displayed in a table. If it can be displayed in a table, it can be exported and used in a report, or used in a table to be placed in a sheet or somewhere else in Excel. So here's an example of if there were just an alternative where you wanted to report what the head loss methodology was. So this table is basically telling us we're not calculating minor losses, we're using a standard methodology, and the coefficients are 0. So if I wanted to put that in some documentation, can be a copy-paste function directly into Excel, or I can use a report icon and function to generate more of a Bentley formatted report. Same thing with rainfall, same idea. Most options have this standard report format, or they come in a table that can be exported to Excel. Flex tables, we've already gone over a few of those, probably tired of seeing them by now, but we did try and recreate the standard, as best we could, the standard drainage documentation tables. So there is a spread calculations table. You can see the column headers there. And it's probably not going to be the easiest thing to fit on an 8.5 by 11 portrait. Also, kind of due to I mentioned open road splits up the types of structures. So outfalls and headwalls are in their own realm that can't necessarily be easily combined with others. So to give the tailwater information and any other boundary conditions, that's its own separate table there. The storm tab, I think we've looked at that pretty thoroughly, but definitely still open for comment. This entire chapter is just trying to present the best that we've come up with so far to date, but definitely looking to find something that's going to be most acceptable going forward. And lastly, the catchment table, just to summarize the drainage areas and the C value that ends up being used, which if users go with the route of giving a percentage of multiple sub-areas, that ends up having to be a separate table in itself. But it is reportable. All right, so similar to the plans development, tables are added to microstation sheets the same way. Yeah, so now we can dive in and explore some of these reports. Definitely share your thoughts on what's useful, what's not useful, what would be ideal if we could change, that sort of thing. But this should be a pretty good browse through the options that we have. Okay, so exercise 6.1, the first step is to complete the hydraulic model properties. So we're going to go over to the drainage and utilities workflow, back to tools, and in the project tools group, the project properties icon is sitting at the top. So it starts out blank. I'm not sure if this would be maybe populated more if there were some specific steps in creating the project or that sort of thing, but it doesn't hurt to just have this as a option for users to fill in, especially if there's multiple ones. All right, oh, no. So our title is drainage design. We'll just say State Road 61. Engineer has a first and last name. And they work at engineering company. And we'll give it today's date. All right, so any notes about the system? Maybe a checked by and a date. This could be a place to document that sort of thing. And then clicking OK will just kind of save this to the background properties. All right, so I'm going to rerun our Zone 2 3-year storm just to make sure that the latest calculations are going to be reflected in our documentation. So back to Compute Center, make sure it's on Analysis, and I'm going to Compute Scenario. And I'm going to hit close. All right. So now that it's definitely fresh in its mind, the first report that we're going to take a look at is the hydraulic model inventory. So just by clicking the icon in the report tab of the drainage and utilities workflow, this report is automatically generated from the analysis scenario, all of the settings that went into it. I'll zoom in a bit here, just make sure it's visible on the shared screen. It also includes a network inventory, so not entirely useful information here, but gives us a count of each type of structure. And that continues. So this inventory basically lists every possible type of structure that could be here, and so there's a lot of zeros. And then has a summary of pipe at the end. So we get a total length of pipe. So if we wanted to just print to PDF, we could do that for the export document under the file tools there. We could also export it to Excel and edit. If we wanted to get rid of, say I don't care about the network inventory section, I could just send it to Excel and remove those rows and print from there. All right, so that is hydraulic model inventory. I think I will go ahead just for our purposes here We'll export this to Excel, and you can kind of see the product you get. I'll put this back into the drainage engineering data. And there were just prompts to save and asked if we wanted to open from there. So it's a foreign file, so I'm being warned about it, but I trust it. So similar formatting. The columns at the top are all sorts of combobulated, but rows are easy enough to edit and remove if we wanted. So I could select the entirety of the network inventory and hide. I think I have to get out of protected view to save it or edit it fully. But, so then I could print from here if I wanted. So there's options. Once OpenRoads generates content into a report, it's not the end of the story. You can make edits to it after the fact. I'm just going to save that as is and close out. So the next way of looking at information that might be valuable for documentation is the rainfall. So going back to the Components tab and opening the Global Storm Events. So these are the two storms that we had set up for this model. I can simply select all, do a copy with headers, and paste it into an Excel sheet. If that's a valuable format or concise way of reporting that information. So we can save that as a table. I'm just going to browse for engineering data, and we'll save this as global storm data. Now, formatting can certainly use more attention. This will get the bare bones in there for us to show how bringing it into a sheet would work. All right, the next set of tables we're going to take a look at are the FDOT flex tables, specifically for documentation. So we had briefly looked at the storm tab, and I don't recall if we already exported it. Yep, we did. All right, going to need to do that again. Once it's in the spreadsheet format, you can edit further for formatting. Is there a question?
If you did, no, I was just going to say, did you need to save that off now that you did a reanalysis of it?
Yeah, if anything changes,
Okay.
yeah, I would definitely want to make sure I'm exporting the right snapshot in time. So if we're going to think about bringing the storm tab into a MicroStation sheet, I've got to save it as an Excel file, and then I can see it gets pretty lengthy in the horizontal direction. I can give it some borders and make it some FDOT font, maybe mess with some columns as needed, but again, that can be refined. The other table, actually we're going to run a different storm to do the spread table. But I think we want to go ahead and get the outfall table out as well, and probably the catchments. So let's do the catchment, which is the drainage area table. And And in this case, I had 0 sub-areas, so it was all just a single area, and I had hard-coded in the change to the C value. So at that point, this table can be exported to Excel. And then again, formatted, saved in it as an XLS. Were there sub-areas, I could access that table from the catchment table, clicking on the ellipse, and then this itself could also be exported. And outfall, FDOT outfall towards the top there, that is includes the tailwater conditions, information about the location of the outfall, and any other changes. It gets the total, summarizes the system at that point as well. All right, so, and then a scenario in which we would want a different storm ran is spread. So if we wanted to go back to our compute center, change the scenario, and in this one, if we wanted to refine it further and, I don't know, not waste the computer's time by processing a 4-inch hour per storm through the pipes, we could change the settings on the topology to just inlets and have that information. But it doesn't hurt to run it. So I'm going to go ahead and compute. So now if I were to go back to our flex tables and the spread table at the top should have results that are relative to a 4-inch per hour intensity. So again, we can export to Excel. And go through the process of formatting to whatever end deliverable it needs to be it a report or bringing those tables into a large format sheet. So if we want to create a different sheet if needed, in this case, I think I'm just going to go to our sheet view and remove the table that we placed for plans. But let's say this was a different sheet altogether, but basically the same idea. Keep the orientation and profiles and information that was there in the plan sheet and populate this bottom area with tables from the calculations. So we go to drawing production and place table. And we can see what our storm tab looks like. And this will be in need of formatting, but that can be done either here or in Excel before trying to place it. So this is a 48-inch wide table here. But those are some generous column sizes. So I think that's generally the gist of the options. I guess I can go back and before we hop into discussion, I'll show how the label tool works for catchments. But then we can jump into some discussion on how we want this to work for documentation. Get reoriented. All right, so in the place label tool under text favorite, actually, well, we'll try this. The plan node ID, we don't want a leader, but I want it to recognize this drainage area and place a label wherever I land the cursor. So DR103, that's the accurate drainage area identification. So adding that information to plan view is easy enough. I think there's ways if we want the area's acreage to show up, we could do that. There is the catchment table already that does cover that content. So Vern, did you have some of those examples I sent of this overall sample plan sheet from a drainage documentation, or what it would look like as a standalone report?
So those were in that shared folder, but I think they all have them in the drainage documentation samples that was shared out. Do you need me to share it out to you?
I might. I kind of moved some stuff around.
I mean, I'll share it out to you. Actually, earlier it wouldn't let me do it to external people, but let's see. I don't know why it likes you, but it doesn't like other people that are external. Since this link won't work for people outside your organization, so I'll just show my screen and you tell me what you want to show.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so here's all the information you sent. So is it one of these? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, the two at the bottom, I think, would be the two PDFs to open.
Okay. Which one? Oh, okay, so this is the...
Let's do both, yeah.
Okay, so this is the example.
Yep, this is showing a little more formatting attention paid to these tables in Excel. And it shows the extent, I think, of tables that would cover the required documentation information. So it does take up a few more tables to accomplish that. But it's all here. It can be cross-referenced to the plan view. So yeah, this is one option as far as preparing documentation. So yeah, there's the drainage areas labeled with a aerial background. And the alternative is the other PDF, just tables only. That's the attempt at using a combination of the default Bentley tables. And if you scroll through here, they're all eventually there, but some need a little more space than others. Those could be probably formatted to be on the same page if someone were so inclined to do so in Excel. But those are just the individual files that are separated out on different pages. So I would like to get some feedback from the group if there's a known preference, or we definitely don't want this, or anything that we need to do to update the course guide.
Do you still have a list of the advanced topics that we've been tracking on things that will...
Yeah, I do.
So we did recognize as we were going through this basic course guide that there would be some advanced topics that would likely be useful. Oh, there it is, Chapter 7. But we haven't started any of the, actually we have started, I think, one of them, the stormwater facilities. Is that even on the list?
It's, well, it's down there at pond design.
Oh, pond design, yeah.
From a
Yep.
plans production
So
side, that's, yeah, you've definitely got a good start on that end, but I think there probably is more material if there actually is design function for ponds, if users want to go down that route using open roads, the calculation engines.
Like the state storage information and all that?
Well, I mean, even just modeling how something we'd normally use ICPR to do the calculations, the capability has been added to open roads drainage. So actual design.
The design model, not the physical model, right?
Right.
Analysis model, I guess.
So I guess.
Yeah, so we're pretty close to having the CAD model workflow and the sheet production workflow for stormwater facilities just about completed. I imagine we'll have it in another couple of weeks or so. We'll have it ready for everybody to review. But these were some of the other areas that we're tracking. Would be good to have some either additional, like an advanced topics course that covers chapters for each of these. I just wanted to let you know that we've sort of been tracking these in case anybody had any questions on some of these other things.
Yeah, and this will get refined. This is more of the brainstorming compilation that we've done to date. So I guess back to the documentation, from a deliverable standpoint, what is are we going to leave it up to designer preference to compile this information in the best way they see fit? Do we want to recommend a template? It's kind of a mix and mash of tools that are developed by DOT and some that are just standard output from open roads. This is, I guess, my first best stab at a version of that, but it can be refined further if there's direction